Alright guys, another day, another strength. Got another video for you today. So recently I made a video where I talked about thinking about movement patterns over muscles, right? So I want to elaborate on that a little bit because I think it's very, very important. So I want to start off by saying obviously muscles and movement patterns are intertwined, right? So it's like, what I said in that video was, if you want to train a certain muscle group, don't think about the muscle, just think about a movement pattern instead, right? So obviously you're going to ask like, well, how am I supposed to train a muscle without thinking about that muscle? And so what I mean is that if you're going to train the same muscle multiple times per week, that's where the key is. You want to vary the movement pattern by varying either the function of the muscle or the angle of the movement, right? So one example for the angle is with the bench press. I love this one. What I see a lot of the times, people will flat bench press and they'll do it 3 times a week, for example, or even 4 times a week, and they're doing the same thing every single time. So you run into 2 issues right there, right? One issue is that it's the same movement pattern all the time, so you can wind up having issues with your joints, your connective tissues. You're kind of getting overuse injuries and accumulating that by doing that. The second thing is that if you want to do it properly, right, you can avoid that overuse by varying the volume and intensity. But the issue is that if you're just always doing flat benches, then a lot of the days, probably if you're doing 4 days, like 2 of the days have to be super easy, right? Where they're just not even that productive. It's great if you're training for strength because you get to practice the movement a ton. But if you're training for, if you're not peaking for strength, if this is like an off-season type program, it's kind of unnecessary. And that's another issue for another video. I think people can conflate, like peaking versus off-season, that kind of thing. But anyways, so an example is instead of doing flat bench all the time, even if you do flat bench, flat dumbbell bench, flat curl grip bench, it's still kind of the same movement, right? So vary the angle. So an example is instead of doing that, you could do a flat bench one day, an overhead press one day, an incline bench one day, and then a dip one day. And on top of that, you can also vary the rep ranges to adjust the intensity, right? So you could do your flat bench as your heavy movement in the 1 to 5 rep range. You could do your incline bench as the more medium movement, and you could do like 5 to 10 or 6 to 10 for that one, right? Your leg movement, the overhead press, you could do 10 to 15 or even more. And then for the dips, you could keep them also in that same like 10 to 15 rep range. So that way you're hitting 4 different muscle group or 4 different angles of the same movement pattern involving the same muscle groups, right? And then what that does is allows you to train very hard with a high relative effort each day. So instead of having to leave like 5 reps in the tank, you can train each one of those very close to failure as long as you're adjusting the sets accordingly, right? So you're getting a lot of quality work in throughout the week with those different movement patterns, right? So another example we'll talk about, that was the angle. So altering the angle of the movement pattern. What you can also do is alter the function of the muscle itself and choose different movement patterns that use different functions of that same muscle. So one example would be the lats, right? You can train your lats isometrically during a lot of different lifts, right? There's like the deadlift, the RDL, they're super heavy, so they require a lot of recovery resources, right? But they're actually not that fatiguing for just the lats. So you can then train the lats again, either the very next day or in close proximity, right? So you can train your lats multiple times a week that way. So you could do like a heavy deadlift one day, you could do chin-ups or lat pull-downs the very next day or the same day or whenever later in the week, right? And then you can also use more lat like isolation movements like straight arm push downs or pull downs. And then you can also do like dumbbell pullovers, right? So you could all in the same week, honestly, you could have an RDL, a straight arm pull down, a pullover with a dumbbell, and then also like a chin up variation. And so I do that personally, actually. That's exactly what I do. I train 4 days a week and I have one of each of those. So like my Monday actually, so I do the barbell row on Monday, and then on Tuesday I do the straight arm pull down to like obliterate the lats. So they're used on Monday, but not like destroyed. And the reason, so you could also argue like, why not have both of those on the same day? Or why not have all these on the same day, right? And the issue is that you just get into a very, very long session that way. So the upper body, in my opinion at least, requires a lot more volume than the lower body. And everyone's a little bit different. For me, like my bias is that I come from a starting strength background, so I prioritize the squat for a very long time. So I have very developed, legs and glutes and adductors. So I can just like squat and deadlift once a week, and that's going to maintain my lower body size. But for the upper body, I can incorporate a lot more. So anyways, that's my personal bias there. But yeah, so I could do, like I said, barbell row on Monday using the lats, Tuesday obliterating them with straight arm push down, and then Thursday using them with the chin up, and then Friday obliterating them with, I actually do both an RDL and a dumbbell pullover on Friday. And they recover just fine. And the reason that I know that I recover just fine, this is very crucial right here, is that each movement pattern is getting stronger over time. That's the key. So it's also unreliable from the standpoint of looking at it as just muscles, because you can take progress pictures, you can look at it in the mirror, but sometimes you're pumped, sometimes you measure wrong. So it can be unreliable, and especially as you're more advanced, like it just takes a lot longer for those muscles to grow. So if you just monitor the movement patterns, make sure you're progressing over time, then you know for sure that you're actually growing. And then you can also use those other methods in conjunction with that as well. And then I would also just add a note that the back in general is often misinterpreted because there's so many muscles involved. So like I said, like people do a barbell row one day and they're like, oh, my lats are smoked, right? Like I can't train the lats again. And most of the time they're not. If you're like really good at feeling the lats and targeting them in that muscle or in that movement, then you're good. But most people aren't. So you can and you should train the extra areas of your back more frequently. So you could do, like I said, barbell row Monday. You could do the straight arm push downs on Tuesday. Also do like some rear delt flies on Tuesday. And then you could do like some dumbbell shrugs as well or something like that. So that way you're, obliterating the back. And then as you get more advanced, then you can kind of spread it out more and more throughout the week. And then you can confine all of that to like a pull day, for example. But yeah, that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you can implement this into your training. Let me know how it goes, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, goodbye.